Welcome to this evening's meeting. Thank you for attending this meeting of the Licensing Act 2003 Subcommittee on Wednesday, the 2nd of April. Before we get started, I would like to run through some housekeeping. There are no planned fire alarms, so if it does sound, please leave via the nearest emergency exit. For those that are unaware, toilets are straight down the corridor and on the left-hand side at the junction. And can I ask that all mobile phones are kept on silent or ideally switched off? My name's Councillor Matthew Lynch. I am the Chair of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee and also Chair of this committee. Can I ask members on my right-hand side to introduce themselves?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Craig Sullen, Borough Councillor for Croston Moors, Exton South.
Margaret Fans, Borough Councillor for Charlie North East.
And can I ask the Licensing Officer to introduce himself?
Yes, good evening, members. I'm Nathan Howson. I'm the Principal Licensing Officer for Chorley Council.
Can I ask the Legal Officer to make her introductions?
Good evening, my name is Sushma, I'm on the legal team, thank you.
And Democratic Services?
Yeah, Carl Asprey, Democratic Member Services Officer.
And then would the applicants' representatives like to make their introductions?
Good evening, Leo Charamides, Council for McDonald's.
Mark Lane, Licensing Officer for McDonald's. Should start with the buttons. The one which has got a little light on is the one which will switch it off and get a little red light on the top.
I think the councillors is on.
Mine are always on. It's okay, press yours as well. Does it not come on?
No. Thank you, it works now. Sorry, thank you. One hurdle.
And responsible authorities?
Try now. There you go.
There we go. John Lovick, licensing.
Thank you. We also have an observer in the room. I won't ask him to introduce himself, however, he is the new director, what's the official? Head of Planning and Enforcement, so he's on a learning curve tonight. This is his first licensing meeting, so hopefully it will prove valuable. Okay, so we will go on to the hearing and we will proceed as follows. The subcommittee to decide whether to allow persons specified on Regulation 8 notice permission to speak. Our licensing officer will outline the report. Questions to our licensing officer for clarification will be permitted from subcommittee members, the applicant or legal representative, and then responsible authority, in this case the police. The applicant or representative will then be invited to make representations in support. Questions to the applicant or representative will be permitted from the subcommittee and responsible authority. The responsible authority will then be invited to make representations. Questions to the responsible authority will be permitted from the subcommittee and applicant or representative. The responsible authority will then be invited to briefly summarise if they so wish. The applicant or representative will be invited to sum up again if they wish. The applicant or representative, responsible authorities and officers who are not directly supporting the subcommittee will be excluded from the meeting at this point as we enter deliberations. Following deliberations, we will request that the applicant re-enter the meeting so that I can deliver our decision. The applicant will be issued with a detailed notice of decision within 5 working days after this hearing. You will also see a copy of the procedure in front of you. Is everybody happy? Everybody got a copy of that? Okay. Thank you very much. So we will move to opening the meeting. Apologies. Item 1, declarations of any interest. If a member has a pecuniary interest, they must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you should leave the room before the business starts to be discussed. You do, however, have the same right to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right and then leave immediately. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision on this matter. Does anyone have any interest to declare? No? If you do believe you do have an interest, you can declare at any time. Item 2, procedure. The procedure for the meeting has already been outlined. However, as I've previously stated, a copy of this procedure can be found in front of you and also on pages 3 and 4 of the agenda. Right. Item 3, subcommittee to decide whether to allow persons specified on Regulation 8 notice permission to speak. Members should note that permission should not be unduly withheld. Have we got any requests, Nathan?
Yeah, there are no requests, Chair. Everybody's entitled to speak who is here.
Thank you very much. Item number 4, determination of application for a premises licence, McDonald's Restaurant, Wooddale Road, Claytonley Woods, Chorley. Nathan, as a Principal Licensing Officer, will you present this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm going to begin on agenda page 5 for anybody who wishes to follow along. As you said, this is a hearing to determine an application for a premises licence in respect of McDonald's Restaurant at Wooddale Road. The reason it's been referred to the subcommittee is because relevant representations have been received. I'll start at paragraph 8 then. The application relates to the site of the former public house, the Beaumont, which has been vacant for a number of years. It abuts Clayton Green Road on the south side, and there's some residential properties to the south and southwest, and commercial to the north and northeast. You'll find that there's a location plan appended at Appendix 1 of the report. Planning permission was granted for the site on the 12th of November 2024. Condition 16 of this planning permission restricted the use of the premises between the hours of operation of 6 a.m. and midnight, Monday to Sunday. Turning then to the application, on the 7th of February 2025, an application for a premises licence was made by McDonald's Restaurant Limited, and there's a copy of that application at Appendix 2. You'll see that the application seeks to authorise the following licensable activities, namely provision of late night refreshment, and that's between 2300 hours and midnight, Monday to Sunday. The subcommittee will note that the provision of late night refreshment is only a licensable activity between the hours of 2300, 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. So there's no requirement for an authorisation under the Licensing Act to sell hot food and drink outside of those hours. So it's just that additional hour which this application seeks to authorise. You'll see at section 18 of the application, the applicant sets out the steps they intend to take to promote the licensing objectives. The application was advertised in accordance with the regulations. There were notices displayed at the premises. There's a notice posted in the local newspaper, and it's been published on the council's website for the whole 28-day consultation period. On the 24th of February, there was a representation received from a resident, Mr. Shepherd. This representation relates to the prevention of public nuisance, and you'll find a copy of that appended at Appendix 3. On the 5th of February, a representation was received from Sergeant John Lovick on behalf of the Chief Constable of the Constabulary. This representation relates to the prevention of crime and disorder and the prevention of public nuisance objectives, and that's appended in Appendix 4. Following that, and on the 13th of March, Sergeant Lovick provided additional documentary information in support of that representation, and you'll find a copy at Appendix 5. The subcommittee will recall that only representations which are relevant to the carrying on of licensable activities at the premises to which the application relates should be taken into account. Anything which relates to a premises located elsewhere within the district are not relevant for licensing purposes. Members, I'll just pause there. You'll have seen as well, included in the agenda papers, there's been 2 additional supplementary parts to the report which have been received. Both of those are additional information from the police. So it's just at that section which is relevant. Turning then to the conclusions, the decision should be based on the individual merits of the application and the representations. In accordance with the regulations, a decision must be made within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day on which the hearing is held. In accordance with Section 18, the authority must, having regard to the representations, take such steps as below as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licence objectives. Those steps are, if any, to grant the licence subject to the conditions operated in the operating schedule, modified in any way as the authority considers appropriate for the promotion of the objectives, and the mandatory licensing conditions, can exclude any licensable activity from the licence, although obviously in this case there is only one activity which is being applied for. To refuse to specify a person who licenses the designated premises supervisor, this is a late night refreshment licence, and so that would not be an option, or to reject the application entirely. Chair, that's the report, unless there are any questions that I can assist with.
Members?
Not from me, Chair.
Councillor France?
Thank you, Nathan. So just to confirm, this site seems to be partially within a residential area on 2 sides, but there was only the one objection received from local residents. Is that correct?
Yes, partially in a residential area. There are residential properties in the area. I wouldn't necessarily describe it as a residential area because of where its exact location within. But yes, you're right. There has only been one representation from local residents received.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but how widely did you display notices to say that this application had gone in for this licence?
Yeah, so the responsibility is on the applicant to display notices. Officers will go out and check the notices. They're required to be displayed every 50 metres along the periphery of the site, and that was complied with in this occasion.
Anything further?
Me, Chair.
Okay. Any questions for the licensing officer?
Just 2 brief questions. The exact location you refer to, it's in fact part of a retail area in a former public house. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And the police in their evidence have made extensive reference to Asda, Lidl, the 24-hour service station, as well as the town centre McDonald's. Are you aware of any enforcement actions or reviews or any pending interventions against those premises, all of which have premises licences of one description or another?
Not aware of any
No.
enforcement action relating to those.
Sergeant Lovick, any questions? Okay. Therefore, can I ask the applicant and representatives to make their representations?
So yes, thank you very much. As you've heard from your licensing officer, this is an application for late night refreshment permission under the Licensing Act 2003. It is for permission for 1 hour from 1100 hours until 1200 hours, and it fits within what your local authority have deemed appropriate in respect of planning which is that the premises should operate from 6 a.m. until midnight. As you and your colleagues are no doubt aware, planning and licensing are entirely separate. Amenity, however, which is the planning consideration, is far, far wider than the promotion of the licensing objectives. It covers everything from bats to transport to schools and so on. And it is actually quite fascinating to observe that your police officer seems to be relying on the planning principle quite wrongly, but one of his many mistakes in that regard. But as a matter of planning, your local authority has deemed it entirely suitable to have this type of premises operating in this specific area to these hours. That's the land use principle. And so now we turn to the promotion of the licensing objectives, which is a separate and distinct regime. I'm going to turn to the operating schedule first, which is at pages 20 to 21 of the agenda before you. I turn to it because the police describe the operating schedule as ambiguous, standardised and seemingly generic, which is somewhat surprising, given that McDonald's operates nationally. It has a wealth of experience upon which it relies, and it's able to translate that wealth of experience into specific local operations. And so its operating schedule reflects that, and I'll go through it. You will see that first and foremost, the operating schedule discusses the role that they play in their local community and working in partnership with all of the responsible authorities in order to ensure the promotion of the licensing objectives. Unfortunately, sir, we weren't able to engage in partnership on this occasion. The normal practice of Mark, who's been in post for how many years? Over 10 years now, as the sort of all things licensing nationally, is to make the applications only after planning permission has been secured, so that we fit in with the envelope of planning. And then we reach out to the responsible authorities and indeed to local residents where we're able to do so. You will know from the Section 182 guidance in your own statement of licensing policy, you encourage partnership working. You encourage it either before, during, or after. This is an unusual case because Mark, who talks to people up and down the country, was forced to send an email to Mr. Howson because he was so shocked by the conduct of the police officer, who essentially refused to discuss his objections with him. Just imagine that for a moment. Your police officer, your expert, has said, don't like your conditions, which is fair enough. He's wrong, and I'll explain why he's wrong in due course. And says they're vague and unenforceable, whatever it may be. And so the natural thing would be to contact the police and say, well, let's talk about it. What can we do? And in fact, you, sir, have provided assistance to your police officer because Annex C of your Statement of Licensing Policy has pools of model conditions. So it's not a very difficult conversation for the police officer to have. For example, what's the preferred wording of the CCTV condition? Well, it's written in black and white for him, so he doesn't have to do very much thinking himself. But the response to Mark was effectively, no, I won't talk to you. Like I said, I found this quite surprising, and the fact it was so surprising, on the 13th of March, his disappointment was expressed directly to your head of enforcement, Mr. Howson, in an email. I can say this because I've known Mark for over 10 years. I thought that was a bit dramatic. But then, actually, I met the police officer over tea at 6 today, so thank you for that. And I asked him whether he wanted to discuss conditions or suggest suitable wording, and he said no to me as well. So he clearly doesn't want to talk or engage in partnership, which is perhaps of grave concern to you as a local authority, but nonetheless we're here to have this discussion with you. So I find it very disappointing. I must say I assumed that it was because the officer was junior or inexperienced, but I didn't expect that of a sergeant. So there you go. We've not been able to have a discussion with the police, and according to our discussion outside, he's going to regale us with the relevant information today, because despite the nearly 400 pages of submissions, which, as Mr. Howson has confirmed, much of which is entirely irrelevant and inadmissible, because he says in his presentation to you, it's at the premises that's relevant, not what happens at other premises. And he was very clear in his advice to you on that this evening, and he wasn't challenged, quite rightly, because that's the correct statement of the law at any stage. Anyway, we are keen to engage in partnership, and we'll have the conversation through you. CCTV, sir, well, as you can imagine, our experience nationally is such that we have really rather robust CCTV. Whether there's a condition on our licence or not, our CCTV covers our internal areas. In fact, it covers our work areas, our staff areas. It's about keeping our staff safe. It even covers the external area insofar as data protection allows us to do so. Where we have car parks and drive-throughs and so on, we have more sophisticated CCTV there. As you can well imagine, it covers the door, it covers the till, and it is of a particular quality. It would be all of the key factors that cover that CCTV in terms of standards and so on are recorded in that condition there. We always make that CCTV available to the police, sometimes the local authority if they request it as part of the condition. And so in principle we offer that. But we know, because many local authorities have their own model conditions, we know that many police authorities have preferred wording. We adopt the relevant wording to suit the locality. Unfortunately, your police officer was unwilling or unable to give specific wording that would satisfy them. But the most important thing, sir, is to satisfy you. You are welcome to turn this wording into a condition, which is what happens with an operating schedule. The operating schedule is used as the basis to translate it into workable conditions, or we're very happy to adopt your model conditions in Annex C. I'll explain Staff Safe. Staff Safe is both audio and visual monitoring capacity installed in the restaurant. It is a button which is pressed, and what happens is that once that is activated, an external monitoring service is contacted. It's actually in Scotland, and apparently a Scottish voice booming over the sound system in the restaurant is really good for controlling behaviour. So, for example, a voice might boom and say, "You there at the back doing your homework and not listening to me, you know, put that down." And it has a particular impact. It's surprising that the police officer doesn't understand what that means, because in at least 4 of the examples in this bundle of papers, there is reference to the external monitoring service and the relationship with the police. So either the officer hasn't read his own evidence, or he just doesn't understand it. So what happens is that where staff are alarmed, they press this button, there is a call, that patches through to the local police service, and as you'll have seen from the evidential bundle, the police call and say, "Oh, you know, we can't get involved, mate, because we don't have a PNC number, you have to call us too," or whatever it may be, or we don't engage in external monitoring services. But that is there, and it's a very useful device in our armoury that has proved to be useful, and the police have provided references to that. We also engage in full training. The training manuals are quite significant, so they include health and safety, MABO, SIA, conflict management, and so on. Now, the training is quite widespread. It's, I always enjoy mentioning this, but it's a sad fact that if you play classical music in a restaurant, it calms people down and sends them away. You'd hope that they would be like encouraged to sit and listen to some Vivaldi, but apparently not. So it's sort of basic techniques like that. I don't know if you've been in a store recently, but you can go onto a touch screen and order your food, including any personalization of order, or you can now order from your phone, which goes into the store. Now that has had a massive impact in respect of conflict, because again, I think this is rather sad, you don't have to talk to anyone. There's a good chance that if I talk to you and give you my order, you might not hear me, you might not understand me, I might not hear you, I might not understand you, and that makes it very difficult. Whereas now, with a printout and a computer record, it says, well, this is what you asked for, this is what you got. It reduces conflict and other considerations. So, as you're aware, we have to abide with fire safety, health and safety, and so on, and that's all encompassed in that. Under the licensing regime, you're specifically told in the Section 182 guidance not to impose conditions that replicate other regimes. So you wouldn't expect conditions around health and safety, risk assessment, fire risks, capacity, and so on, because it is a repetition. But they're set out there so that you know that these things are happening and occurring. Litter is a concern. McDonald's recognise that as a quick service restaurant, it can and does contribute to the generation of litter. And so what we do in all our premises is we have litter picks, litter maps, which are kept under review. So if you were, for example, to give us a particular map, what we do is we keep that under review. We tend to do our litter picks from sunrise through to sunset. There's a minimum of 4 a day. During the hours of darkness, there needs to be a risk assessment and insurance considerations before we can send people out. So that's where the Licensing Act meets the health and safety regime, and we do that. But certainly when a store is open and it's well lit, the immediate curtilage, we deal with that. Noise, our extractor fans, the tannoy system, the ordering from the cars, and so on, are all controlled in terms of noise levels and so on. They can be set and adjusted in order to meet the local requirements, and they are. And then finally, protection from children from harm, and generally safeguarding. The safeguarding agenda is considered to be particularly serious by McDonald's and engage very heavily with training. In the evidence that the officer has provided, you have, I think, at least 4 or 5 examples of a number of vulnerable people. I think one of them that stands out is a 15-year-old girl that went to school, went to McDonald's, wouldn't leave and wouldn't return home. McDonald's contacted the police. There were some vulnerable people that were in care. They wouldn't leave the store. McDonald's contacted the carers and contacted the police. I can't imagine what you'd expect them to do, but it's because they recognise that they can identify vulnerable people and they can take appropriate measures and appropriate action to do that. So far from being ambiguous, standardised or generic, they're very specifically tailored to the operation of a late night refreshment operation such as this, operating for 1 hour within the planning permission. I can see no ambiguity, no standardisation other than a willingness to adopt local vernacular, if you will, and there is nothing generic about them. They reflect directly the lived and worked experience of McDonald's, and they're constantly evolving. So all our premises are under constant risk assessment in order to determine whether there might need to be additional security, additional staffing, whether there needs to be additional lighting or less lighting, as the case may be, depending on the area. So, sir, there's been no direct criticism of those conditions, which, as I say, reflect practice other than this very lazy representation by the police. But as your your enforcement team officer makes clear, it must be relevant. And certainly I, and no doubt you, are going to think, oh, why are the police making this rep? Because the Section 182 guidance requires us and advises us that the police are the experts on crime and disorder, which of course makes sense. But then paragraph 9.12 says it remains incumbent on all the responsible authorities to ensure that their representations can withstand the scrutiny to which they would be subject at a hearing. We've already seen Mr. Howson has criticised the police evidence because so much of it is just irrelevant. It relates to other premises that operate in entirely different ways. It's the Lidl, it's the Asda, it's the Starbucks, it's the service station, it's the town centre McDonald's versus the retail park McDonald's, which have little relevance to the particular operation here. And so it's unclear how all this data actually relates to the specifics of this premises. It's important that we do bear in mind the specifics of this premises because, as your legal advisor will be well aware, the Court of Appeal has given you some very specific guidance into what you must do. Now, I don't expect a police officer necessarily to be aware of Court of Appeal authority, but certainly you and your legal advisor are. Paragraph 42 of the Court of Appeal in Hope and Glory tells you that licensing decisions involve an evaluation of what is to be regarded as reasonably acceptable in the particular location. Notice that word, not what happens in Asda or in the town centre, quite irrespective of the random times that don't look at the actual hours of operation in the particular location. In any case, deciding what, if any, conditions should be attached to a licence as necessary and proportionate to the licensing objectives is essentially a matter of judgment rather than a pure fact. So you're reminded there that you must look to the specific location and indeed apply your judgment. Now, I've been working exclusively McDonald's for as long, actually longer than Mark's been in post, actually. I worked with his predecessor, which makes me feel very old. And in all that time, in the 10 years that I've represented McDonald's, we've never had a single review, which my bank balance is very sorry for, but does speak to the credit of McDonald's and the way that they propose to operate. Now, that location point, which has been entirely missed by your police responsible authority, is also highlighted not only by Mr. Howson, but the Section 182 guidance. It says at paragraph 2.27 that beyond the immediate area surrounding the premises, these are matters for the personal responsibilities of individuals under the law. So the fact that I leave the McDonald's and I happen to be a particularly antisocial person that might have been drunk from the pub or wherever it may be and decide to leave my letter at the local bus station or on the train station is deplorable. And McDonald's don't like it, which is why we engage in litter picks. But as a matter of law, we can't be held responsible for that antisocial behaviour beyond the area of our premises. And this actually tells us something very important, which the Court of Appeal recognises about location and conditions. The conditions you can impose as a matter of law are limited to those that we can control. So the real question is, are we doing our bit within the jigsaw of the nighttime economy and the way we operate in local communities to ensure that we are going above and beyond? CCTV, staff safe, litter picks and so on. My submission to that is yes. And despite being invited twice, both by Mark and myself, the police can't make any other suggestions. And in fact, if you can come up with anything else that we could be doing, I'm very happy to hear from it. And we welcome that conversation. We do not shy away from it. And the other factor to bear in mind is paragraph 14.13 of the Section 182 guidance, which tells us that licensing law is not the primary mechanism for the general control of nuisance and antisocial behaviour by individuals once they are away from the licensed premises and beyond the direct control of the individual. Nonetheless, it's a key aspect of such control, but not the primary mechanism. And of course, that's what the police have failed to appreciate. What you have is a lot of general evidence about a very wide area unrelated to the specific premises, which seeks to colour your views, and that's just not relevant and not admissible. So it's very disappointing when, in response to Mark's requests for a discussion with the police, the response was, I just don't want it open past 11. It's not what the police officer wants. It's about what's lawful, especially when you've already indicated that it would be suitable to have this type of premises at this location to these hours operating in your area. So I don't propose to go through the evidence any further because it would be exceptionally tedious for me to go through each and every one of the numbered incidents, pointing out that they are either not related to the premises, they are in early during the day, or they are just natural interventions elsewhere. What I do invite is, given that the police have shut the door to a conversation with us, I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you and your colleagues, particularly if there are any further conditions that we can offer. We're happy to discuss them. Otherwise, sir, I would invite you to place little weight on the police evidence as it being mostly irrelevant and informed by an inappropriate outlook that is out with the guidance and the Court of Appeal's findings. So I commend the application to you as applied for. Insofar as there are any concerns, they can be met by the conditions, and in any event, your enforcement teams will no doubt keep a watch on these premises. But given that we've heard confirmation that the kind of incidences that are described in this evidence in respect of licensed premises have not led to enforcement action, have not led to review, suggests that the evidential threshold for such enforcement action just isn't being met. Otherwise, you'd have expected the police or licensing to have taken action. So, sir, thank you very much.
Thank you. I always welcome a presentation that pretty much answers all the questions that I had prepared. So please don't be offended by me not asking anything. Questions for the members? Cool.
Thank you, Chair. More of a question, more of a statement, and that is that I think McDonald's is a business and as a community partner, certainly within the Chorley area, is well recognised for its engagement. You've made much of the Stay Safe, which we're aware of. I actually sit on planning, and it was one of the things I mentioned was the CCTV. We're already aware of that, which is why we didn't condition it that, because you put it in. So just to say that from Chorley's perspective, we recognise what McDonald's do as a group, as a company, and its community engagement. However, one of the reasons that we planning didn't stipulate a specific time hours is because we knew it would come back to licensing when your application came forward there. And the police, Lancashire Police, are our consultee. We rely on them for evidence that they present because obviously they know the area. I take on board the points you've made about the generalisation. Yes, it is a retail area. We're aware of that. It sits within the retail conurbation of Chorley. So,
Have you got a question, Councillor Sutton? Rather than a...
It's a generalisation, Chair, basically just to say that we recognise and that...
Well, that's for the committee to recognise. Have you got a question?
Tell you what, I'll come back to it. How's that?
Councillor France, have you anything you'd like to ask? Okay, thank you. Sergeant Lovick, any questions?
Just a couple, Chair.
Yep.
If I may. Sorry, Nathan. I think that's excellent, I really do, and necessary. But you also mentioned conflict resolution, and the alarm stay-safe system. Why is it that McDonald's require conflict resolution training for its staff? Why is it that it requires an alarm in its late night venues?
So it's a matter of basic health and safety. It's a matter of basic risk assessment, whether you're McDonald's or the local Chippy or Asda or Lidl. There will be angry customers, there'll be people having a bad day, there'll be annoying kids, and just knowing how to deal with them just seems very sensible. It's nothing unique or special to McDonald's. The only thing that is unique and special to McDonald's is the extent to which we go. I challenge you to go look at your quick service restaurants that might be in your area and see which of them have the thoroughness of training that we have for our staff, or indeed the engagement in terms of litter picks. It is no criticism to have good practice and to strive to have better practice in light of experience.
So just so I can get a feeling of, you talk about the training that you give. So would it be reasonable to suggest that things like mental health champions or dementia awareness, things like this, are they also encompassed in your kind of training?
Well, so you can see it in the evidence. So you'll have seen in the reports by the police. So, for example, on page 206, there was a girl, a 14-year-old girl, that got caught smoking weed by her mum, and she had her phone confiscated. So she was quite sick, and she went to McDonald's because she feels like she's going to die. The staff were able to identify that, and so were able to contact the police and get help. Who else are you going to call? Then, for example, there is, this example on page 216. There's a lady in the drive-thru, she's got a kid in the back. She's got I think it's described as a child in the back, and she seems intoxicated and heavily drunk. So what did McDonald's do? They stopped her, they got her in the restaurant, they called the police, who were then able, she went inside for hot food, and then the police were able to come, page 218, and give her very strong words of advice about drinking, driving. Her car was left at the McDonald's. Her car key is at the Chorley station, and so there you go. And then there is an example of, where did I put it? Of, I think, a vulnerable person who was from a care home that was stuck. And so there's a 14-year-old with a carer, so page 232. And you see this is all happening during the day. So insofar as protecting children from harm, people with mental health issues, people who are looking after their children, it's quite clear on the police evidence that our training works. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow-up question, Sergeant Wilbert?
Yes, I mean, I'm aware it's a 44-page document, and it is very comprehensive. I'm not aware of it in any other late-night refreshment venues across any of the councils that I cover. Second question is quite simple. I understand that planning of sanction till midnight. Why is this hour from 2300 till midnight so important to McDonald's? Is it a prelude to going for 24 hours?
So that's entirely irrelevant. Whatever the commercial reasoning or whatever the practical reasoning of the application is, I don't know of any situation in licensing where we have to tell you why we want a license. We want the license because we want the license. I just think, with respect to the sergeant, he just maybe doesn't understand licensing very well. But if you want to refer to the Section 182 guidance, paragraph 14.19 makes it clear, for example, that their need for licensed premises are commercial considerations and are not relevant for the licensing authority. I'm sure your legal advisor is familiar with the case of Blackwood. That's a case that related to planning and licensing and the interplay together. And the question was asked in that case of the High Court, well, if planning are saying until midnight, why do you need to come for licensing? And the simple answer is that planning determine on a far wider spectrum the principle of land use. Is it appropriate for there to be open at this location from 6 a.m. until 12 midnight, a quick service restaurant of this variety? So you as a council says yes. And so licensing takes a sort of very, I hate to say this as a licensing lawyer because this is my career, but it takes a sort of a second position which is left to fill in the gaps. And what the High Court says is the operational details, so the CCTV, number of SIA if required, level of training, work that out with the licensing committee. Why? Because the needs of a quick service restaurant are going to be different to the needs of a pub, are going to be different to a restaurant or a bingo hall or whatever the case may be. So that's why we come here to deal with those operational matters, and that explains the distinction, the difference there.
Could I just make one final observation, Chair? And then
Yep.
nothing further from me. The applicant talks about a licensed premise, a pub. If this was a pub, a public house, applying to go to midnight, then the police wouldn't be objecting. Because there's more crime and disorder in McDonald's in Chorley than what there is in any licensed premises.
So with respect, I really got to object.
I think we'll deal with that when we come to your actual representations. So I understand the point you're trying to make. However, I refer back to what Nathan's previously stated of this is a site that should be judged as its own site. And I think we'll deal with that as a separate issue. Any further questions? Nathan, is there anything you think that you need to advise the committee of, having heard that representation?
No, I think we've adequately covered where we're up to so far. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, Sergeant Lubbock, would you like to make your representations to the committee?
Thank you, Chair. As I said, I'm the licensing sergeant. I cover 3 councils: Chorley Borough Council, West Lancs Borough Council, and South Ribble Borough Council. In them 3 council areas, we have 1,200 live licensed premises. So we're busy. And we deal with over 900 applications every year. Out of them 900 applications, you're lucky if 10 of them develop into objections or a review. And we go to great measures to negotiate and to avoid coming to town halls. If we can solve it, then we will. We think we fully agree with partnership. We fully support partnership. It's the ethos. But I just need to give you some context, basically, as to why the police have found themselves in a position where they can only reject this application and say, we cannot support it. We cannot get into negotiations. I'd like to. It'd be easier to for the police. But it's not a position that the police find themselves in. They simply have got no option but to ask you to reject the application. And the simple reason is because for the police, for Lancashire Constabulary, and I dare say up and down the country, McDonald's is synonymous with low-level crime and disorder, antisocial behaviour and nuisance. And I'm going to say, if you took Clifford Street McDonald's out of Chorley, you would reduce antisocial behaviour and nuisance by 30%. Now that's a lot, and that affects our communities. And we, the police, under the Crime and Disorder Act, have got a duty to reduce antisocial behaviour and nuisance. Now, unfortunately, when we do have incidents at McDonald's, anything up to 2300 hours, there's an argument, rightly or wrongly, that it's a neighbourhood policing issue. And after 2300 hours till 5 in the morning, it's debatable whether it's a licensing matter and whether licensing should be dealing with it. Now, that's an argument that's trundled through licensing departments in the constabulary, and my position on that is the police shouldn't have to police licensed premises. Licensed premises should be able to police themselves. And if they can't do that, and then they shouldn't be trading. And we need to step in. McDonald's is a global institution. It will, without hesitation, continue to systematically subjugate any opposition to its objective. It will not stop. And the police are quite small in this game, I'm afraid. When I received that application, I had a read through it, and I want to say yes to all applications. It's just, with 900 applications, I want to say yes. It's better if we can say yes, and sometimes it's a phone call and say, you need to look at this timings, or you just need to look at this and CCTV in your beer garden and so on. But when I read this application, and my colleague said it quite rightly, if it didn't say McDonald's on the application form, you'd think it was from another individual. You'd think it was from someone who'd not really sent one in. It was pretty new to it. And it is, for me, it's exactly what the applicant has said. I feel it's generic. I feel it's vague. I feel it's insufficient and not of the standard that I would expect from a global institution. But it's the same application that they sent in to Chelmsford in July last year, to Oxford in March this year, and to Foxhall Road in October 2021. And that Foxhall Road resulted in proper conditions being put in, I'm going to say. And it seems almost a situation where it's a tactic by McDonald's themselves, so that the licensing sergeant will read that application, and it almost compels them to pick up that phone and get into a conversation with the applicant and say, we can't have these conditions. They're inappropriate, they're insufficient, they're not specific enough, they don't really say must, shall, or will. They're vague. And as soon as the police get into a conversation with the applicant and say, let's talk about these conditions, bearing in mind they know that McDonald's is synonymous with crime and disorder, and when you look on the police systems at the moment, as of this year, McDonald's for us in Chorley, our McDonald's is number 7. It's in the top 7 out of hundreds of venues that we go to on a regular basis for situations that have already been explained. So I'm basically forced to get into negotiations with the applicant and say, let's talk about conditions. But because in my mind at all times, I know that McDonald's just mean an increase in crime and disorder, an increase in antisocial behaviour and nuisance, then I've got to turn around and say, I've got to reject this application. I cannot get into negotiations with you. And the applicant's quite right. I was asked tonight, do you want to talk further? And I can't. All I can say is bring this argument to you, bring this debate to yourselves, and then let you decide what you feel is appropriate. And obviously, the police will respect that. But that is the position that the police are in. I hope I've explained the context sufficiently there as to why we find ourselves here tonight. Because it's a decision that's not taken lightly. Nobody wants to get into a bum fight with McDonald's. They'd be foolish. I've talked about Clifford Street, and you'll see from the bundles how many calls of service we've had. In a 2-year window, we've had 43 calls of service. There was actually 117 on the police systems. We whittled them down, so it actually came down to Clifford Street itself. And that was only taken from 5 p.m. until midnight. And the nuisance calls were 24 in number. 14 of them were grade 1s, blue lights. Wooddale Road, for us, suffers more crime and disorder, that locality. And I know what the applicant has said. It's inappropriate. It's not relevant. I feel it's relevant. I feel you should take the whole area into context. I don't think you're making a proper decision if you don't take the whole beat code area, what kind of impact it's going to have on the residents, on the community. You know how many people were against the application. In an 18-month period, 46 calls regarding nuisance. There was 147 in total, but that included private dwellings. And they were taken only from the commercial premises and public open spaces. No, there were no calls after 11 o'clock. So there were 46 calls in an 18-month window at Sierra Charlie 58, as we call it, is that particular location. But there were no calls after 11 o'clock, and that's because nothing's really open after 11 o'clock. So if we open McDonald's after 11 o'clock, crime and disorder, nuisance, antisocial behaviour will go up. McDonald's will probably not even trade after 11 o'clock. They'll shut the fryers down, they'll shut the ovens down, they'll come to you guys in 6 months' time and say, look, we've been open till midnight, there's no crime and disorder, can we open till 5 o'clock in the morning? And that's the position we'll probably find ourselves in. Sierra Charlie 58 is the area beat code for Claytonley Woods, all right? And it's the highest nuisance calls when you look at the adjacent premises. And there's paperwork that has come through which explains that, so you're aware, all right? I'm going to keep this brief because I think I've made my point. I've explained why we're here. We're not in a position to accept conditions. We're not in a position to negotiate any conditions because, like I said, we know that crime and disorder will go up. And as soon as we turn around and say we accept conditions, then it's checkmate. And yeah, that's the end of it. We have lost. And that seems to be, I feel like I've been coerced, certainly besmirched tonight, but certainly coerced throughout all this into, agreeing to conditions. And you've got a decision to make. That's your role as the licensing subcommittee. Lancashire Constabulary turn around and say, the only position we can say is that we ask you to reject this application for the reasons that I've said. And apart from a bit of summing up after, I've got very little else to say. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Sure the members have read through the papers and the substantial amount of information that's there. As far as the licensing committee is concerned, we can only really look at the application for the site at Woodville. I understand your reasoning for raising the McDonald's site, which is in a town centre, which has a thriving nighttime economy, has suffered antisocial behaviour for a sustained period. It is within quite a close proximity to transport hubs, youth zones, commercial centres, etc., etc. My question to you is, bearing in mind your view of the McDonald's site, how has that never come to a review in the first place? I understand what you're trying to say. However, I think it's for a different entire meeting altogether. The evidence that you've submitted, I can't understand how it's relevant to the site that's in Clayton Green. The issue that you have with the high crime rate in the centre is a very separate issue that should have been dealt with in your normal course of duties, as we've dealt with other things in Chorley in the past. We've followed the procedure and we've dealt with what we need to deal with. Now, you've also referred to the Ackhurst McDonald's site, and I think you, to quote you, you said they have proper conditions in place. Now, judging by the tone that you've used, what are the conditions that spring to mind at Ackhurst site that you believe are relevant to managing and controlling that particular site?
I haven't got the Foxhall Road, as I call it. Is that the one you mean, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a Tesco one. I haven't got the Foxhall Road conditions in front of me. Could you just explain what your question is exactly, please?
So I'm just, obviously, the committee has to reach decision. There are a number of varying decisions we could reach. If the committee was minded to approve the application, but then attach conditions, what are the conditions that you refer to as proper conditions? What are those conditions that you would like to see, not just at this site, but obviously at the Foxhall Road site?
Can you stop? I have seen the Foxhall Road conditions. I've not got them with me.
Right.
They are, they're in the bottom of there. But yes, they are the conditions that I would have expected on the original application. But because of the crime and disorder, that's not a debate I'd like to get into with the applicant at any time. Should you choose to impose the conditions from that on the Foxhall Road application, then that is your call. But the police cannot endorse or ask you to reject the application in relation to going to midnight for the reasons of crime and disorder, antisocial behaviour and nuisance. But I would have expected that the original application would have had conditions on it which would have been similar to the Foxhall Road or along that vein.
Okay.
Don't know how
Nathan, could you just research? Could you just research what differences between applications would be, and just, I'll give you quite a bit of time, don't worry.
I'm already on with it.
Right, but you could inform members as we go through the end of it. I think that'd be useful. Okay. Right, questions from the committee. Councillor Sullivan.
Chair. Obviously, love it. Is it Lancashire's police's position that you've ever engaged with McDonald's, or is this a stand that you've taken that this is how you see it? You take it.
The debate amongst the licensing departments is as simple as this. Without a doubt, it's crime and disorder, and they are a problem for us in relation to antisocial behaviour and nuisance and low-level crime and disorder. They're a focal point, and the majority of them are 24 hours. And so they do attract drink drivers and so on and so forth. A lot of, several licensing officers believe that it should be a neighbourhood problem up till midnight, and the neighbourhood should be working in partnership with the McDonald's staff, and some do. Most do, and they go in on a regular basis, and we try and work with them. And the argument is nothing's enforceable until after 11 o'clock at night. And so it's only after 11 o'clock at night, between 11 and 5 o'clock in the morning, that the licensing team should step in. Now, as I've said, I believe if you've got a premise license, all right, if you've got a late night refreshment license, then you should be able to police themselves. And there shouldn't be any issues of crime and disorder. But that is where, if you will, McDonald's fall through the cracks. And to suddenly turn around and say, let's go through all the logs, let's take on McDonald's, is a mammoth decision by any licensing individual. And the way that the police are spread, the other commitments they have, certainly for, when they cover multiple councils, you literally have to write a team off for 3 or 4 months. And so it's just not something that licensing teams take on, unfortunately, and they try and resolve it with the staff. And it's a debate that will rage on. I've told you my position. It's a debate that will rage on. And licensing, the global institution, keeps moving forward.
Yeah, I accept that, obviously, but as a committee, we are considering this specific application for this specific site, and I have taken note of the other premises on the site, the ASDA, etc., and I'm trying to look at that as a specific one, but I'm just trying to tease out you there, Sergeant Lovick, that you do or you have in the past engaged with McDonald's on this very idea, and you've answered my question. Thank you.
Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. From the documentation we've received, it's clear that there are areas within the immediate locality of the new McDonald's that are subject to antisocial behaviour in terms of the sports centre and the Asda and the car park of the Asda and such. Is there any evidence to show that opening a late night refreshment in an area like that increases the antisocial behaviour, or does it just draw it to that centre? Do you see what I mean? I'm trying to say, will it just maybe focus those young people, who are mostly teenagers from the reports, aren't they, between the ages of about 10 and 16 or so? Will it just focus them on that spot, or will it increase it? Is it just, do you see what I'm trying to say? I just wonder whether there's any documentation to show that.
I understand what you're saying, Councillor, completely. And I would suggest that the fact that right now there's no incidents after 11 o'clock at night on Sarah Charlie 58 that in relation to commercial premises suggests that when the lights go out on the existing commercial premises, then nothing is attracted to that locality. As soon as we turn the lights on, then something will be attracted. And the application, just going back to the original one, talks about unaccompanied children in the venue. It won't be unaccompanied children. It will be groups, on electric scooters. And it's a little bit misleading. So right now, no incidents, no issues or concerns after 11 o'clock at night. Once you turn them lights on, it'll be a different conversation. And I would suggest that's probably the best evidence we've got.
It sounds to me, Sergeant Lovett, that I'm looking at the licensing objectives, and it says prevention of crime and disorder. If crime and disorder is going to happen, it's going to happen. If it's going to happen at a McDonald's, it sounds to me like McDonald's look at that and say, we are not putting up with that, we will phone the police and we will get this resolved. Am I right in thinking that that is the definition of prevention of crime and disorder, that they have a moral, a civic duty to report crime and disorder when they see it, even though they are not promoting that crime and disorder? I think the example raised from yourselves and from you, Sergeant Lovick, is if somebody is drunk driving and they turn up at McDonald's for something to eat, and then and McDonald's then report that somehow it lays the blame at McDonald's door for providing food at whatever time of night. That person is responsible for their actions. McDonald's, in the example given, is preventing crime and disorder by contacting the police and notifying them of an individual that may or may not be under the influence of alcohol while driving. How do you link that? I mean, I know you say that in this individual was given a strong talking to. They're either over the limit or they're not over the limit. So I don't understand that. But how do you quantify or link that to the fact that this business which is operating is somehow the cause of that person leaving, getting in the car after a drink, and then I think that's too spurious a link to lay at McDonald's door. How do you rectify? How do you quantify that? Sorry.
I've read that log, obviously, and I would suggest that individual was breathalyzed, was under the limit, was probably going towards being over the limit, and that's why the keys were taken off her. I put her at Chorley Police Station. She left the car there, and strong words of advice about her conduct were given. I wasn't the officer on the ground, so I can't say specifically, but I would suggest that is what happened.
So just to clarify, in that instance, even though there was a report, no crime was committed?
No.
Right, okay. I think that's enough. Anything further for members? No? Yeah.
Just a quick one, Chair. So if we're taking on board what you're saying, Sergeant Lovick, you make the case that when the lights go out and there's darkness at 11 o'clock, the reports of antisocial behaviour either diminish or cease.
Yes,
Is that the point?
they cease.
Okay, right, thank you.
Questions?
Well, so I'm in a slightly different position. One, so you've asked the questions, and secondly, I don't believe that this officer is even capable of properly answering any questions I have. I am really interested in the Foxdale Road conditions. The police officer intimated that he didn't have those conditions, he didn't know them, and then of course he reached down into the box at his feet and handed the document to your licensing officer. So perhaps if your licensing officer would be so kind as to read those conditions out, that might be a very useful thing, because as you noted, sir, the police officer described those as proper conditions, and I'm curious to know what that actually means. If you have those, could you please read them out for us?
Nathan? Adam?
Oh, I don't know what's going on. Yeah. I can, and I also got them electronically. I can send you them, fine. So I'll just deal with the Annex 2 conditions. I don't think anybody needs to hear the Annex 1 conditions. Food and or drink shall not be served to customers in glass receptacles. The premises licence holder shall work in partnership with all responsible authorities in order to promote the licensing objectives. The premises licence holder shall operate a robust closed-circuit television policy in accordance with data protection legislation, and to assist the police with the prevention and detection of crime. Appropriate signage shall be displayed stating that CCTV is in operation. The premises shall operate a digital motion-activated CCTV system where images are retained on a hard drive system. All CCTV equipment shall record images of a proper quality, it meeting the industry standard, and shall have the LGC Forensics or Caligate certification. The CCTV shall automatically sound an alarm anytime the equipment is faulty or is not recording in order to alert management of the fault. The premises licence holder should cause the CCTV system to be serviced at regular intervals by qualified technicians, Access to the CCTV system will be provided to police officers or responsible authorities on reasonable lawful request. A system with both audio and visual monitoring capability, e.g. staff safe, shall be installed in the restaurant. The system should be capable of being activated by either fixed or mobile panic buttons. Once activated, the system should link the premises to an external monitoring centre, which shall be capable of intervening to resolve crime and disorder issues and or provide the appropriate advice or instruction to support and protect the restaurant staff and customers. All staff managers shall have safety and security training, which shall include an accredited conflict management training, e.g. MABO, SAA. There shall be safety systems in place to protect the safety of customers and staff at all times, such as Staff Safe. We shall work with the local environmental health office and local fire station to ensure we are complying as far as reasonably practicable with relevant health and safety and fire safety legislation. All restaurant staff shall receive comprehensive safety training to ensure that safe working methods are accepted. All staff shall be trained on the evacuation procedure in the event of a fire or other dangerous occurrence. The premises shall operate a no alcohol containers policy to prevent persons carrying open alcohol into the in-store area. Litter patrols should be carried out, collecting both McDonald's packaging and any other litter which has been discarded in the immediate area surrounding the premises. Premises shall act on recommendations from the local environmental health officer regarding extended areas to be patrolled as far as this is reasonably practicable. All of McDonald's packaging produced by the premises shall display the bin it symbol to encourage customers to deal with their waste responsibly. Where practical, measures shall be put in place to limit noise produced by the premises and customers to the premises. And finally, all doors shall be self-closing and customers shall be encouraged to be considerate to our neighbours and to limit noise both when ordering their food and leaving the local area.
So you will no doubt observe, if you've done the reading, and I'm sure you have, page 20 and 21, the wording of the proper conditions mirrors some 90% exactly what is in our operating schedule. That's the tried, tested and proven operating schedule. The distinction is no glass. McDonald's don't serve glassware anyway, but the local authority requested it. The self-closing doors, and you'll have observed that we then at that time used the Bin It logo. What we now do is we use the recycling logo and the Our World logo, which is an advance on our statement. So you can see there it's almost word for word of our tried and tested. So the police officer, on the one hand, is describing this as vague and generic and so on, and yet 90% similar, he describes as robust and proper conditions. I don't think I've ever said this in a licensing hearing. I just think the officer has a problem with McDonald's and it's personal. I just can't find any other explanation for it, and I won't take it.
Well, we'll not speculate on things like that. I think the committee will hear all the information and deal with that in a fair and reasonable way. Just to query you just slightly on the glass, as you've raised it as one of the only things. Do you still do the free offers where you give Coca-Cola glasses? Is that gone?
No, that's gone.
That's gone. That's fine. Right.
Along with toys for children, because it's bad for the environment. We give books now. I've had that question. And I don't have a seagull policy, because I've also been asked that questions in a committee. Though we do have blocks, actually, at the moment, don't we? We do, yeah. We do have the blocks.
Well, moving swiftly on. Okay, so any questions, Nathan?
No, just to reiterate the point that's been extensively made about what can and can't be considered as part of this hearing, but I think the committee are well aware of that.
Okay, thank you. So there are no other persons. Therefore, can I ask Sergeant Lovett to briefly summarise?
Thank you, Chair. People, the community, councillors, quite rightly ask the police, what are we doing to prevent crime and disorder, antisocial behaviour and nuisance? And this is what we're doing here tonight. We're telling you that if you open another McDonald's, probably be a prelude to 24 hours. It will increase crime and disorder, antisocial behaviour and nuisance. There will be victims as a result of your decisions. I feel the police have been coerced into accepting conditions throughout this. I feel it's been a tactic from a global institution that, as I've said earlier, will systematically subjugate any opposition to achieve its objective. And the objective in this matter is to go 24 hours. It's about making money. They will crush any opposition. The fact that the applicant has been so vitriolic about myself tonight says something, certainly to me. I would like to think that throughout all our dealings and our disagreements, we can always remain gentlemen and civilised. I will conclude by saying that by granting this application in its current format, it will contribute to incidents of crime, disorder and nuisance. And the police have got no option but to ask you to reject the application. Thank you very much for listening tonight.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to make your, would you like to sum up, sorry?
So I think the most generous I can be is clearly the officer is passionate about crime and disorder, but he is grossly ignorant of the licensing regime. He said in his evidence, amongst many wrong things, that we have lost. It will be a defeat for the police. That demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the licensing regime. The High Court, in a case that your licensing officer, your legal advisor will be familiar with, the Chief Constable of Nottinghamshire Police against the Nottinghamshire Magistrates Court, 2009 case. So it's been some time to get familiar with it. Paragraph 38 says this. Lord Justice Moses says that the district judge, and of course yourselves, should also bear in mind that the decision in relation to the licence as to conditions in the licence is not a decision similar to that which he would be accustomed to resolving in the ordinary course of litigation, i.e. win or lose. There is no controversy between the parties, no decision in favour of one or another of them, but the decision is made for the public benefit, one way or the other, in order to achieve the statutory objectives. Now, I read that out because I'm aware, sir, that you and your colleagues understand that. The officer doesn't, but I hope it goes to explain the reaction that I have to the police officer, essentially just getting it wrong and trying to mislead you. It was really interesting, sir, that in answer to your question about what does it mean to promote the prevention of crime and disorder, when a driver that seems drunk approaches our store and our store intervenes, calls the police, moves the driver into the store, protects the child at the back until the police arrive, this police sergeant cannot bring himself to credit that is going above and beyond what is required to promote the licensing objectives. It's staggering, and perhaps it's no surprise that the officer refers to systematic subjugation and crushing the opposition. We're certainly in the era of conspiracy theories, but I didn't expect to find them here in Chorley. And I'll just one example. When he says that if the licence were granted, he, as your expert on crime and disorder, says they won't even trade. They'll switch the fryers off for 6 months, then reapply and say there's no crime and disorder. What evidence is there for your police sergeant to come here and say that a firm with a national reputation is engaging in this level of deceitful, dishonest, and fraudulent behaviour? I mean, it's staggering. And he wants you to follow his advice. You know, I'd run 1,000,000 miles from that advice. You know, he is no expert. He quite clearly has whatever axe to grind. And when he comes up with these staggering facts of percentages and crime and disorder, what you have here is Mark, who's been working for 10 years for McDonald's, and can say to you, he's never had to respond to a review. That is a fact, not a fantasy, not some wild imagination of all the visitors on their scooters and so on. So finally, the one bit of useful information that he gave to you was that the premises on Foxdale Road has proper conditions. Well, what are those proper conditions? They're rooted in the application form, which he has described as vague and ambiguous and so on. Those conditions are replicated. On the one hand, he applauds those conditions as being the proper conditions, and on the other hand, they're vague. He's just inconsistent and unreliable. Please, sir, don't place your trust in him. Sir, you've heard nothing to undermine this application. I commend the application to you. I warn you against following the police officer into error. You would be going against the Court of Appeal, the High Court, and the Section 182 guidance. And as passionate and imaginative as the sergeant might be, I prefer to side with the Court of Appeal, the High Court, and the Home Office in this regard. So, sir, thank you very much.
Thank you. Therefore, we'll go to decision-making process. All those who are not involved in that process, can I ask you to make your way to the waiting room? In reaching its decision, the subcommittee took into account the following: both written and oral evidence presented in connection with the hearing, the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, the Council's Statement of Licensing Policy effective from 2021, and the Licensing Act 2003. The subcommittee has decided to grant the application subject to the conditions presented within the operating schedule. The reasons are as follows. The subcommittee found there to be a lack of evidence to suggest the 4 licensing objectives would not be upheld if the application was granted. The applicant provides a comprehensive level of training to their staff members with increased security measures in place. That is the decision of the committee. The applicant has a right to appeal the decision to the Magistrates' Court within 21 days. I don't think you will be doing so. I would doubt it. Anyway, that's the decision of the committee. A formal written notice will be received within 5 days. Thank you very much for your attendance. I will now bring an end to this meeting. Thank you very much, everybody. See you.